we are so proud to work year-round to ensure that you have an incredible lineup and to ensure that this festival stays free and open to all. And we are able to do that through the generous support of our sponsors. And I have got to give them a shout out because this festival stays free because of them. So thank you to Richie Battle, to Randy and Lisa Cohn, to Ellen and Linwood Dame, Elizabeth Galvin, Mary and Robert Haft, Adam and Ramona Nee, Nancy Seaman and Alan Schwartz, Beth Wilkinson and David Gregory, and to our top sponsors, the White Elephant and the Boston Globe. Thank you to all of these incredible folks. So I am very excited to welcome Julian Sancton for his very first maiden voyage to our shores, to his first trip to Nantucket. Julian is the New York Times best-selling author of Madhouse at the End of the Earth and a senior features editor at The Hollywood Reporter. His work has appeared in Vanity Fair, National Geographic, Esquire, The New Yorker, and GQ, among many other publications. He has reported from every continent, including Antarctica, and lives in Antarctica, just kidding, in an ice hut. No, he lives in Larchmont, New York, and is joining us here in Nantucket for the very first time. Julian, welcome.
Thanks very much. What a pleasure.
Yay! So, what I like to do is, everyone is going to buy the book. Get that in your heads now. Everyone here is going to buy the book because you are not going to want to miss this story. What I love about nonfiction is that you can lean into the crazy. The burden on a fiction writer is to make an imaginary world and a cast of characters believable. And no matter how good you are at that, someone will always say, that would never happen. And with nonfiction, you can say, oh, but it did. And that is delicious. You can lean into the madness. And that is what I love about this story. So I'm going to give you what you can't get on the page. Julian, bring us back to the moment of inception. When did you decide you had to write this book?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here. This is, as you said, this is my first time on the island, but there is a Nantucket connection to my nautical fascination. My favorite book growing up, this is going to sound weird, but was Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. So it's just for those who haven't read it, it's this gothic horror story that kicks off here and goes all the way to Antarctica. So there is a through line there. The inception for this story was, it was about 2021. I had just published Madhouse at the End of the Earth, which is a tale of nautical woe. And I was wary about being, I'm fascinated with these what people now call the sad boat books. Things like the Wager or In the Heart of the Sea. And I didn't want to necessarily be hemmed into being a sad boat book club member, but there was one story that didn't leave me alone. Ever since having read headlines in the mid-2020s, 2015, about the discovery of a sunken Spanish galleon off the coast of Colombia worth, according to the headlines, $17 billion in gold and silver. This was the pride of the Spanish treasure fleet that had been sunk in battle in 1708. Ever since having read about this, I thought that what an incredible story. It feels like out of the magic realist imagination of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and in fact it was. It turns out that this galleon, San Jose, was a part of a subplot of Love in the Time of Cholera. I was thinking, this is just an incredible story. Not only that, but it was this galleon and its riches were the subject of a vicious custody battle between the Spanish, who claimed that this was rightfully their treasure because it was their ship, even though it was 320 years old, and at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea. The Colombians, who said this was in their waters, so they had every right to it. The British hedge fund titan who had invested in this expedition to discover the remains of the San Jose, who claimed that according to Colombian law, he was entitled to a portion of the treasure. Then there were the descendants of the indigenous, Bolivian tribespeople whose ancestors were forced to mine the gold and silver of the San Jose and were demanding some form of reparations. And to top it all off were the band of North American treasure hunters who claimed to have found the debris field of the battle 20 years before that and were entitled to half the treasure. And so I thought, what an incredible story. But it's been 5 years. Surely something has happened.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and no, in fact, it hadn't. And I spoke to a few journalists who were digging around, trying to find the true story behind this, and spinning conspiracies about how it was really Tony Blair and the Colombian president Juan Manuel Santos had conspired to steal this treasure for themselves. And amid all this, there was one detail that was missing. Who found this treasure? Who was the maritime archaeologist who was behind the search and discovery of the San Jose? And all that was known about him is that he was, according to the Colombian president at the time, the aforementioned Juan Manuel Santos, he was a man who looked like Hemingway, who approached me at a cocktail party with a treasure map telling me he knew how to find the San Jose. So I didn't know who this man was. It took me a lot of digging, but eventually I did find my way to Roger Dooley, who was the Newark-born, Cuban-raised, very eccentric maritime archaeologist / possible treasure hunter, although he denies it, and former persona non grata on American shores, who found his way to what is known as the Holy Grail of shipwrecks. And I decided, well, if nobody else is going to write this story, then I will. And it began an article in Vanity Fair, and that's when I realized there's a whole lot more to this.
You can see why I had to invite Julian here. Every single bit of that is too fabulous and too fantastical and too crazy to make up, including this Roger Dooley himself with the weird, scratchy voice, the Spanish-speaking guy who actually went to Spain, got access to the dusty shipping archives from the 1700s. Julian was able to read them, even though it was in archaic Spanish, and realized that everyone had been searching for treasure in the wrong place. Tell us that story.
Well, Roger first caught the scent of the San Jose in 1984. He was working for Fidel Castro's state-sanctioned treasure hunting company called Carry Sub. At this time, Cuba was well on its way to becoming a failed state, was desperate for cash, and Castro thought that such cash could be found, of all places, in the many shipwrecks that littered the Cuban shores, filled with Spanish gold from centuries before. And Roger, being essentially the first maritime archaeologist in Cuban history, a self-taught archaeologist, a self-taught diver, had by this point become Castro's man underwater. He was, as much as he was, ambivalent or conflicted about this idea of profiting from history, of prying the gold out of shipwrecks, which would, archaeologically speaking, is malpractice. He had to do what the president said, and he believed that he could try to he could split that atom, that he could lead a diligent archaeological excavation. This was what he dreamt of most. He is not motivated by treasure. He's motivated by his obsession with shipwrecks. He believed that he could find a gold-ridden shipwreck, but also excavate it and learn all the stories that this shipwreck had to tell. And he believed that he found this shipwreck off the coast of Havana, something called the Nuestra Señora de las Mercedes, which is the also known as the Mercedes, I guess. This is a galleon that sank in 1698 that ran aground. And he knew of a historian in Havana who had found artifacts that washed up on the shore after every storm. Occasionally there would be silver coins or a silver crucifix. And Roger was sure that this came from this supposed wreck of the Mercedes that had never been found. He found what he believed to be cannons and the anchor of the Mercedes and went off to Spain to confirm through archival research that this was indeed the shipwreck he was looking for. In fact, he found something completely different. He found the first clues that led him to the San Jose, which were a series of letters written in desperation following the battle in which the Spanish lost this precious shipwreck during the War of Spanish Succession in a battle with the English squadron that was after its gold. These letters related the scenes of battle to, and the loss, the tragic loss of the San Jose and its 600 men to the King of Spain. And those had found their way to Cuba. They had been smuggled past an English blockade to Cuba, of all places. So anybody who was searching for the San Jose would never have found these letters because they wouldn't have been searching for them there. Roger, all of a sudden, 1984, somebody who is, at this point, was on a watch list, on a U.S. Treasury watch list, alongside terrorists and drug traffickers, and was again forbidden from leaving the country, or had in mind that he would find the San Jose, that he would be able to leave Cuba. He was a pathologically optimistic dreamer who thought that this is the greatest shipwreck of all time and I'm going to find it. So that's how he began his quest. And I visited those very same archives in Seville in the Indies, the General Archive of the Indies in Seville, leafing through documents dating back to the time of Columbus. It's this Byzantine archive, labyrinthine archive, completely just impossible to find anything. And my treasure hunt was diving into that archival sea and finding those sort of gold coins in the archival documents, and that led me to be able to recreate the story of the battle, and going through many of the same documents that led Roger to the treasure of the San Jose.
But finding Roger was itself a treasure hunt. Tell us
about
that.
He was a ghost. He's born in 1944. When I started researching this, he was in his mid-70s. And he had no academic affiliation. He had never published anything, so he calls himself an archaeologist, but academic archaeologists beg to differ. He did not have a social media presence. He had never been quoted in the press. Nobody who knew him would give me his contact information, and I gave up on being able to find him, which meant I gave up on being able to write this book because there was no book without him. And all of a sudden, in several months into my research, I get a call from an unknown number with a 305 area code, which is Miami, and I pick up and I say hello. I hear, "It's Roger Dooley." And my heart started racing because I've been told by all the people that I'd been speaking to about this story that Roger Dooley was, at this point I had discovered who he was. I'd been told that he was a charlatan, a con man, and many other words that I can't say in a church. And that he was a criminal, a drug trafficker, maybe even a human trafficker. I later learned that he was nothing of the sort. But when he spoke to me, my heart started racing, as I say, and I ran upstairs trying to transcribe everything he was saying. But the difficulty was not necessarily believing everything he was telling me, it was understanding everything he was telling me, because, as I say, he was born in Newark and raised largely in Brooklyn until he was 13, and his parents moved him to Havana right before the revolution. And this blonde Irish-American kid who spoke bad Spanish ended up now barely speaking English and he speaks, as I describe in the book, like a cross between Ricky Ricardo and Vito Corleone, played at double speed. And I tried to, I had first started experimenting with an AI transcriber. There's a lot of services that will take a recording and transcribe it, and it was absolutely useless with Roger. It did not work. It was gobbledygook. But that was the first of hundreds of hours of conversation with Roger, and the story he spun was a novel in itself.
I think what I find when I got to that likeness of Vito Corleone, and I literally stopped and reread that sentence 3 times because I literally laughed out loud because I could hear it in my head. Although I actually was going to ask you to do the voice just to make sure I was getting it right.
I don't want to mock him too much. He was,
No.
I think it's, one thing he always says is, I'm an archaeologist, I'm not a treasure hunter. Which is, I'm an archaeologist, I'm not a treasure hunter. He speaks the way, and actually my wife and children here, I always have the phone on speaker when I speak to Roger, so they can vouch to whether that's an accurate impression or not. He speaks as the other people in the Spanish-speaking world, and even his wife, who is Colombian, say, as Cubans tend to, as if they have a hot potato in the mouth, just not enunciating consonants. But even other Cubans say that they have trouble understanding him.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, everything about the story is just so fun. And Julian, I think the idea that, honestly, before this, reading it, I had never given full consideration to the idea of pursuing a buried treasure, a sunken treasure. It just had never entered my mind that one could devote one's life, to, it's like, oh, I'm going to be a journalist. And Roger was like, I'm going to hunt for buried treasure.
Well, he would say he would hunt for shipwrecks.
Shipwrecks.
The treasure, for him, is the least interesting part of this story. Obviously for people who grew up reading Treasure Island and watching, the Captain Blood all the way to the Pirates of the Caribbean, people who are enamored with these boyish stories of adventure, the treasure is the hook. But for him, it's shipwrecks. He had, from a very young age, he was a spear fisherman in Cuba with his brother, who was a Cuban Special Forces frogman. The two of them basically taught each other to dive and challenged each other to dive deeper and deeper. Roger had with his brother, founded something called the Cuba's Department of Underwater Investigations, which sounds like a bad CSI spinoff, but he challenged himself to chart every shipwreck around Cuba's shores. I mean, this was an island that was so central to the system of convoys, of treasure convoys and of merchant ships coming from the New World back to Europe. Every one of these fleet systems would converge onto Havana, and yet, which means that many shipwrecks were littering the shores, and yet none of these had been charted. And Roger had at the Department of Underwater Investigations, had a giant map full of colored pushpins indicating where all of these wrecks, modern and ancient, were. And so for Roger, this was very much a single-minded obsession with shipwrecks. And if treasure got people interested enough in these shipwrecks to fund his ambitions, then so be it. He would talk up the treasure. And that's how also he got this hedge fund investor in the 2010s to invest in the search for the San Jose, invested millions into it. But when he got the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute from right here in Massachusetts to lend the technology and to lead the search in the area that he had cordoned off for the San Jose, he certainly did not talk about the treasure because they are a nonprofit educational research institute, and so he talked up the historical importance of it. And indeed, this was the last of the galleons. The San Jose was the last of this type of, hybrid warship cargo ship that was the centerpiece of the Spanish treasure fleets that would not only hold the treasure, but defend it against the many pirates, privateers, and enemy warships that were after the treasure. And so this fact that this was the last of the great galleons, the San Jose, and that it sank, the most resplendent ship that ever came out of Spanish shipyards, and the only one of which has been has been found not by treasure hunters, which means that this is the first chance that archaeologists may have to excavate a galleon and to learn the many stories that it has to tell. This is of the utmost importance to Roger. So even though he talked up its treasure to get the investment he needed, he's now talking it down in order to make it clear that he was not a treasure hunter and that he should have a say in whether or not this ship is excavated and how it is excavated. However, the tragedy of this story is that as soon as he found it, he was pushed aside by the Colombian government and kept at arm's length because they did not want to associate with such a, I guess, shady character. And so he is now living in Colombia, still hoping that he might have some way to participate in the future of the San Jose, but he's living in poverty. Now, for all the people who say he's made his fortune as a treasure hunter, he's certainly not, swimming in gold the way, like diving into gold like Scrooge McDuck. That's not Roger.
Julian, in your very thorough research, what surprised you the most? And follow-up question, did anything that you find change your understanding of the story?
I guess what surprised me the most is I guess I'm pretty naive in thinking that when I thought of shipwrecks before, I used to have to assume that they were as they are in movies, these very romantic wooden ships where the tattered sails are still floating in the current, and you've got I didn't literally think that there was a skeleton at the helm, but I thought that shipwrecks looked like ships, and for the most part, they don't. For the most part, they run aground in shallow waters, obviously, and that they are tossed about by centuries worth of storms and the continued action of waves, and they're dispersed over sometimes miles. The debris of these treasure wrecks or any kind of wooden ship are just basically a sea of flotsam. However, the San Jose is quite different because it sank so deep in 600 meters in the Caribbean Sea, about 30 miles off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia. And it sank so deep and so fast that it essentially wedged its own grave. It sank into a very flat seabed where there's not much current, and so now when you look at the photo mosaic, when you look at a sort of a map of the wreck, you can see the clear outline of the ship. It's magical, and you can see gold coins littering the surface of the wreck, which only leaves to the imagination how much treasure actually is beneath that. But even, I guess, more fascinating for me, gold obviously attracts the human eye. There's the fact that it scintillates is the very reason for its worth. But for me, when you look at it as a historian, when you're as a nonfiction writer, you're always looking out for the detail that will fill in the picture. And for me, those details are the gin bottles that you see. They're the barnacled gin bottles, the sword that it seems to be plunged into the mud, and you see just the hilt emerging from it. You see the medical instruments. You see the cooking instruments. You see a whole sea of porcelain, Ming Dynasty porcelain cups, which hints at or indicates the extent to which the world was already globalized in 1708. And you also perplexingly see a very large number of enema syringes, which speaks to the popularity of that procedure at the time. These were all French made, and this all stems from Louis XIV's enjoyment of the practice.
Julian, I think that when I think about why I read nonfiction is because I love, again, stories that are just too crazy to make up that a fiction writer could not possibly get away with, which I think you did so beautifully.
I've tried my hand at fiction and I'm no good at it, so.
We'll look into your pen name writing unicorn romances later.
It's sitting on a Google Doc. It never was published.
Allegedly.
Thankfully, count yourselves lucky.
But I think a lot of people read it both as a preservation of historical record and also to enjoy parallels to current issues, illuminating current issues. So what parallels, if any, do you see between the world of your book of 1708 and the world that we're living in today?
Well, I didn't. The parallels are made obvious in the book because this was, unlike the first book, this is half a work of history and half a work of journalism. And so, what fascinates me is the extent to which the passions that led to the extraction of the gold and the fight over the gold and the war and the battle and the sinking of the San Jose, essentially the greed of the men at the time, did not vanish when the San Jose died. It essentially went dormant. And when the treasure was rediscovered, all those passions were reawakened and came back to the surface. And now we're seeing in the battle for the custody of the treasure and for the future of this site, we're seeing those passions be very much of the moment. And in fact, the aforementioned treasure hunters that had claimed to have discovered the debris field, in fact, they claimed to have discovered the wreck in the early 80s, and I demonstrate in the book that they did nothing of the sort. They are suing the Colombian government at The Hague now, after having gone through all the court systems in Colombia, even making its way to the Supreme Court in the United States. They are now suing at the Court of Permanent Arbitration in The Hague for $20 billion. And it's a pretty absurd saga, and we'll find the resolution of it most likely at the end of this year, when the hearings will begin in earnest.
Oh, I look forward to that. Something that I was thinking about was that yesterday on stage, Isaac Fitzgerald, who was amazing and hilarious, was talking about his latest book, American Rambler, and he sent it to his parents. He sent them an ARC, and his dad wrote back, said, "Great job, sorry about your childhood." And his mother wrote back and said, "First, I would like to apologize." And then on page 2, there was a list of 300 things that she would like him to consider changing. And they were talking, and he said, "Truth is like a block of wood. And the story that my mother and I would carve out of that block are two very different stories," which I thought was so fascinating. So in your work, which combines adventure, history, and investigative reporting, how do you balance the demands of factual accuracy with the need to create a compelling narrative that readers are entertained by and can't put down? How do you carve that block of wood?
Well, I think that pretty much anything that humans are passionate about can be turned into a compelling narrative if you find a way to channel those passions and bring out the stakes of the story. And there's always going to be stakes for somebody. And so the trick is to find it in a way that's not compelling, just to communicate that to the general reader. And that's something that my background in magazines was very helpful for. In fact, my colleagues, Maureen Orth is here from Vanity Fair, was one of the fabulous writers who have mastered the craft and helped pass it on. Yeah, the one way of doing this is finding the details in history that help fill out the picture. And two different writers are going to home in on two different details. And you don't want to overwhelm the reader with details. You want to find the choice ones and let the reader basically write the book themselves. You describe, the color of the logbook, and all of a sudden the whole room comes alive. It's true that there is a balance, that you don't want to get so wrapped into creating a narrative thrust that you end up overstepping the bounds as a historian. But frequently when there's enough details to draw from that you never have to do that. That you just have to be selective in pace. In divulging those details. The other thing is the trick that I've found that works for me for keeping the reader engaged is withholding information. Not you just keeping them in suspense, but also divulging the key parts in such a way that one leads to the other. So it is about just a kind of sleight of hand more than it is in fabricating anything. It's everything that you show is true, but you show it in such a way that there's a kind of a narrative thrust to it.
Well, speaking of...
It's a little abstract, I'm sorry.
No, I totally get that. Speaking of withholding details, so every year I hide copies of a book on this island somewhere, and then I post clues daily, and whoever finds it gets the treasure of the book. So Julian has shared one of the withheld details on the first page of this book, and right after this session, I will hide it.
By the way, it is very sensitive information that relates to the wreck. You probably won't find your way to it, but I think it'll be interesting for whoever finds it.
So stay tuned for the clues, and whoever finds it gets the withheld details. Speaking of withheld details, the Neptune's Fortune was not the original title of the book. The original title of the book was The Captain of the Sad Boat Club. Just kidding. Julian, what was the original title of the book?
Well, the title on the proposal was one thing, which was it didn't work at all. But the one that that I liked the most, and that I'm sure my wife liked the most, was The Last Galleon, but then there was two reasons why that didn't make it to the cover. One is, for me, my father wrote a book called The Last Baron. My father's a writer as well, so is my grandfather, and it just plucked too many Oedipal strings for me to follow him in that vein. And the other thing is this is a little bit of inside baseball, but my editor was not sure whether most readers would know what a galleon was, and that it might throw people off. And one reason, maybe, he didn't mention this, but the galleon is the currency the magical currency in Harry Potter. So a lot of people might have thought that The Last Galleon was some kind of fan fiction.
And Harry Potter fan fiction is your backup plan, your
career
backup plan.
It is. This is actually what's sitting on the Google Doc.
I had a feeling. So I just want to open it up, because here at the festival, we're all about creating community and conversation. And it's the worst when a moderator is up there yapping and you're like, shut your cake hole, lady, I got questions. So I will shut my cake hole and open it up to your questions. This is your chance to ask Julian anything you want. We're going to go to that, and then you, yes.
Hi, thank you so much. One of the books that I enjoyed the most in the last few years was Ben Fountain's Devil Makes Three. And I was wondering what other contemporary fiction about shipwrecks you have found compelling for the narrative thrust of your book.
I guess there are shipwrecks in this book. The Northwater by Ian McGuire was a book that I really loved. I'm currently reading the White River Crossing by him. In fact, I try to avoid that kind of fiction mostly. I read so much nonfiction accounts or archival accounts related to this world that I think that in my pleasure reading, which fiction typically is, I try to go elsewhere. I still find inspiration in terms of phrase and in the way that they craft suspense, but and again, I feel like I'm really hemming myself in with this shipwreck stuff. Although the next book idea I have is also involving a shipwreck, but no, I think the Northwater was one book that dealt with that world of nautical exploration, and I believe that there is a wreck involved in that, and I thought that was just a fabulous book. He is just an unbelievable writer, and the fiction helps me from a stylistic perspective. I always find that I'm unconsciously imitating the cadences of the writers that I'm reading at the time. So I remember when I was writing Madhouse, all of a sudden, in one of the chapters, I can see, I was reading Patrick Melrose novels right here. I'm really striving for metaphors. I'm really trying to bring out a Proustian strand here, and it's kind of embarrassing. But then over all the edits, everything, all of those flourishes get washed away, and hopefully something resembling my style is what remains. But yeah, if you're seeking that kind of shipwreck adventure, I didn't read the Ben Fountain book, so I don't know. But I think the North Water is well worth your time.
Thank you. I'm really excited to read your book. Two quick questions. What was in the archives in Sevilla? Did the ship's log survive? And also, where's the footage and photos that were taken? Where's that housed? And is it public?
A lot of it, I'll answer one at a time. In Sevilla, there is no log of the ship. At the time, while the English, I did find the logs of the English ships in London in the archives of the Admiralty there, which are very detailed in terms of the weather conditions, the latitude, longitude wasn't then able to be determined precisely. But the log, again, in the absence of a log, and even if there had been, it would have sunk with the San Jose. What we have are testimonies from many of the other Spanish officers in the 15 other ships in the fleet, and they were quite far away, but some of them were close enough to see the ship catch fire and to see the explosion that shattered the hull of the galleon from deep within the hold. And these are really fascinating documents, and they're kind of they're stirring, but they're also terrifying in a way. You see these people, they describe the fire of the San Jose like something like a volcano, and eventually it was encased in a globe of smoke. These details are novelistic that you find in the testimony. But also the testimony is conflicting. Everybody was trying to cover their ass, basically, because they, excuse me, this was a major miscalculation by the Spanish. They presumed that they knew that the English threat was out there. They knew the English squadron was out to ambush them. But they believed that they could somehow thread the needle and take advantage of the wind, and that God would be smiling on them. And in fact, the wind turned at the very last second. So everybody was trying to spin the accounts of the battle in a way that relieved them of guilt. But what I noticed, there were only 7 survivors of the San Jose, 7 to 10, but their testimony did not really shed much light because they were so high up in the rigging. That's why they survived. The ship sank so quickly that only the people who were very high up, they were all sort of young sailors and gunners, would have been able to avoid being sucked into the vortex following the ship sinking. They just say that they were, this happened at night, that they were in the dark, 1 second engulfed in smoke, and then in the next second they were in the blackness of the water. So you get more detail from the English ships, from the HMS Expedition, or that was within yards of the San Jose, and they describe how the explosion was so powerful that it sent fiery planks onto the deck of the expedition, and they could feel the heat of the explosion. So those are the kinds of things that really helped me fill out the details of the battle in the book, and I tried to, when I put them all together, I was able to paint a picture that reminded me of the, I say in all humility, but in terms of Patrick O'Brien's, Patrick O'Brien's books, The Master and Commander, for example. Is my favorite movie, and that was something I tried to capture some of the cinematic feel of that, and the archival records were really essential for that. You asked about the footage. I'll say very quickly. The footage taken by Roger Dooley's expedition with Woods Hole remains under seal. I have seen it, but it is not public because it is also the matter of a legal dispute involving the investor who claims that he was essentially owed the promised money that he was owed was retroactively I guess, taken from him or withheld from him because of the declaration that everything aboard the San Jose was national patrimony, and so nothing counts as treasure. which means that he does not stand to make any profit from this. So because while this whole dispute is underway, everything is kept under seal. But it is beautiful. What you can see is the Colombian Navy has gone back and taken video and taken images of the wreck, and you can see them. You can see some of those images for yourself, and those images are in here as well.
And I think we have one over here. Okay. Oh my gosh, I think we're not going to get to all of these, but Julian will be signing outside.
Okay. Really just a statement. I've spent all my life diving on shipwrecks, and I've tried to read every shipwreck book that's ever come out. Your book, without a doubt, is like the best I've ever read.
Oh, thank you.
I'm halfway through it, and I just bought 2 copies from my friends. It's just written so wonderfully.
Oh, thank you so much.
It really is. It's fabulous, and so everyone should buy a copy. And
This guy was a plant. I'm going to give you that $5 later. You have earned that $5. Thank you.
And I just want to say one thing. A lot of you may have read The Wager a few years ago, which was a bestseller. Well, the name of that ship was named after the captain that sank the San Jose.
That's right. The captain of the expedition was Commodore Charles Wager, who became the first Lord Admiral, and the Wager was named after him. And in fact, if you go to Westminster Abbey, you'll see his tomb is there, and the monument to him has a depiction of the battle in which the San Jose was lost, and it says Commodore Wager and his action against the galleons. So that's thank you for that, and thank you very much for what you said.
It's absolutely true.
So I just want to tell everyone, Julian, I don't know if you know, since this is your first trip to Nantucket, that there are over 700 shipwrecks around our dangerous shoals and 3,000 around Cape Cod. So I don't know what you guys are doing for the rest of the day, but I will be busy looking for treasure. Join me.
I'll join you.
there.
What's the visibility in the water?
Yeah, I think it's like, 1 to 2 feet.
Okay.
Can I find something, do you think?
Well, you tell me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
You've been
think
here longer than I have.
I'm feeling lucky today. But you guys
you
think,
have to declare everything to the state of Massachusetts.
I found nothing, if anyone asks, but I'll be on my own private island if anyone wants to join me. You guys, Julian is going to be signing books. Now, I don't have to remind you that Father's Day is coming up. What makes the best gift? Gift to yourself, gift to others. Yeah, exactly. Make him say something scandalous. Julian, I'll never say where the body's buried. I'll never share where the gold is found. He'll say anything. So get him to write one for you, one for the special book lover in your life. And you can ask him any questions, because I know we had some over here, right outside of the sign.
And the coordinates are on page 212.
Julian, thank you so much. And thank you to
you so
all
much.
of you.